Hi, this is High Growth with HTDC, and I'm your host, Cindy Matsuki. This is where you can find out everything tech, innovation, entrepreneurship, and manufacturing that's going on in Hawaii. And also, if you have any questions during our show, we are taking Twitter questions, so you can tweet us at ThinkTechHigh if you have any questions. For my lovely guest today, my guest today is Mark Watkins. He is entrepreneur and Kickstarter launcher. And so we're going to get into all the details with Mark right now. And he's going to be Skyping in with us from North Carolina. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Cindy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you've had a really interesting journey up to this point, as you were a part of a big company that got sold and acquired by Oracle for a lot of money. And then you've also started your own company that also got acquired. Could you kind of give us a brief overview of that journey to where you are now?
Yeah, I've kind of come full circle. I went to graduate school in math, and back when people didn't do as much computers, they did more math, and joined a very small team and built a 3D graphic system, and the company got bigger and bigger, and we got acquired. I was in Salt Lake City at the time, and we got acquired by a Massachusetts company, which is very large, $1 billion, 5,000 employees, and so I worked in a very large software company for a while. And then I went to a company called Endeca, which is a search company, which eventually got acquired by Oracle, and that started, again, I joined when the company was about 20 people. And when I left, it was about 500 people. Then I did another startup, which stayed small, but we had some success. And finally, I've come full circle, so I'm doing this one by myself at the moment. So from 5,000 people down to one, kind of come full circle.
That's amazing. So what is your background? Your background is in math? Is that what
I started in math, and I was a software engineer for about 12 or 13 years. And then I went.
Wow.
I did my first journey to the dark side. I went into management, and so I was an engineering VP, and did that for a number of years. And then I took what my software friends called the second journey into the dark side, and went over to the business side. And first I did some business development, and then with my last company, I was the CEO. So now I'm kind of getting back to my roots and actually building things again, which is really fun and rewarding. And there's really nothing like building something with your own hands and bringing it to life.
So going back to that company that your previous company that got bought out, it was called Gobi. So did you found that company as well?
I did. I founded it with a few other people. The technology actually came to life at MIT. So two of my co-founders were MIT people. One of them was a professor, and he and his grad student had built a kind of search technology that let them kind of go out into the internet and find different sources of information and pull it all together and integrate it and sort of reconcile different pieces of information. And they had a raw technology. They didn't really know what to do with it. And I was looking for my next gig at that time. And so some venture capital people that I was talking to said, hey, you should go talk to these folks over at MIT. It was Mike Stonebreaker and Mujtaba Pamuk. And I liked what they were doing. And so we got together and tried to make a business out of it. And that's where we hit on this idea of a recommendation engine for finding things to do. So that's kind of where we started. In fact, there's actually a little bit of a Hawaii angle to that story too. So my backstory, my wife's from Hawaii, her family's from Kailua, and we've been coming for years and years and years. And one time that I was there, we had a great time, and we went home, and I was reading in the online newspapers, and I realized that I'd missed Jack Johnson actually playing at the Pipeline Cafe, I think it was.
Oh, while you were in town.
While I was in town, I was so upset. I was like, if someone had only told me, I would have gone. And I had that experience, in fact, with my current venture with books as well too, where favorite authors, and we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, but favorite authors would release books, and I wouldn't know about it. Because people are busy, right? They don't have time to go out searching for information and running down every last piece of thing. And so with Gobi, the things to do engine, it was very much of a, hey, what's going on this weekend? I don't want to have to go look for it. Tell me some fun things that I'll like, that I wouldn't have found out about on my own.
That's great. Did you need to do fundraising for that company?
We did do fundraising. We actually raised 2 rounds of financing, or 3, depending on how you count. But we did a very small seed round, to kind of finance finding a business model. And as part of that, we'd actually negotiated an A round too. So we negotiated a $5 million A round, and then we did another $2.5 million 2.5 years later, I would say.
Wow.
So yeah.
Huh. And how did you build traction for your app for Gobi when you had first launched it?
It's kind of a mix of things. We worked really hard at press, so we were, we had a fun story, right? It's a fun product, right? Who doesn't want things to do?
And so it's easy to understand.
Yeah, it's very easy to explain. It's very easy to understand and very easy to read too. And so it was, easier. It's always hard to get people to write about your product because there's so many products. But it was easier than normal, I would say, to get people to write about the product. And so we worked really hard at it, but we were fortunate to get coverage in some big outlets. We had a Wall Street Journal article and a TechCrunch article and a New York Times article. And so that's one way. Was through press. The other way is through our mobile app. So we had a website and we had a mobile app, and our mobile app eventually was featured by Apple. And when you're featured by Apple, it's like a light switch. We woke up one morning and like sort of smoking. It was like, oh my God, what's going on? And it was actually we didn't know, and we figured out that Apple had featured us, and so it was a lot of downloads very quickly there.
Ah, that's amazing.
It's one of the biggest challenges, for any startup, especially for consumer startups, is how do you get noticed? There's so many companies out there. People have so little time. And the other thing that we learned was you have a pretty short window to demonstrate value when people hear about you. So we started as a travel company. The idea was, I'm going to Hawaii. What's going on? Is there a music concert? Is there a great place I can go hiking? And what we found was that people would hear about a travel product and they would effectively say, that's really great. I'm going to use that the next time I travel. And then they wouldn't travel for 6 months. And they would have forgotten about the product. We actually found that very challenging. You have to think hard about, what's the consumer adoption life cycle for early stage products? People read about it in TechCrunch, hear about it on a broadcast like this. If they don't have a fairly immediate way to apply it to their life, they'll forget about the product. And so it's really important to think about that and sort of how do you create that sort of daily use case for people where they if not daily, at least, a couple of times a week that they need your product. Because if they don't, they'll forget about it.
Or how do you reach them at the right point in time when they could use your product?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, for my current venture, one of the ideas that someone had for me was I use TripIt a lot to manage my travel because I travel a lot. And TripIt is a great product that you keep track of all your flight itineraries and your rental car reservation, your hotel reservation. And they were like, why don't you just hook this up to my TripIt account so that, a week before I'm getting ready to go on my plane trip, hey, Mark, I know you're going on a plane trip. Don't you want to book the plane? And so, yeah, finding those ways to, to get to people at exactly the right time, I think is really.
That's perfect. How did you know that you were at the point where Gobi was ready to be acquired? Or how does that happen? How does that whole process happen?
Well, so with consumer companies, it's kind of a different story than, and by consumer company, I mean you build a product that sort of, normal people on the street might want to use, as opposed to building a product that you're selling to another company that maybe, a bank will buy your software and use it to analyze their data. With consumer companies, especially venture-backed consumer companies, you watch your user adoption curve and you see, how what's your growth in your user base. That's the primary metric. And the consumer business is kind of a winner-take-all business. You're Foursquare or Twitter, and you have tens of millions of users using your product, or you're not. And it's very difficult to be kind of a middle-of-the-road consumer business. And so you watch your user growth curve and you see what's happening and what's the adoption life cycle. And so for us, we were pretty successful. We had, in our peak months, we would have 1 million or so people using the product.
Wow.
And that was, that's great, right? If 1 million people are getting value out of your product every month, that's very rewarding. At the same time, 1 million is not 10 million or 20 million. And so, you kind of look at your adoption curve and you say, are we going to make it to be one of these big successes? Because it takes a lot of money to get to be one of So we saw our progress was good, but not amazing. And, I was at a conference, talking about the product, which is, when you're the CEO, that's a lot of what you end up doing is being out there talking about the product. And I ran into this company called Telenav, and they were a very quietly successful, publicly traded company that nobody had ever heard of, building GPS navigation systems, helping you get from A to point B, helping you avoid the traffic. How do I get to work, in the most efficient way? And I know it's going to be bad on the H3, so what's the best time to leave? That kind of problem. And they had the challenge that they were competing with Google Maps and, eventually Apple Maps that are pre-installed on the device. And so they were in kind of a challenging competitive environment, and they were looking for how do they break out of that. And so we started talking, and we saw an opportunity to take what they were doing and put it together with what we were doing and build something which wasn't just give me directions from point A to point B, but also tell me about, what are those interesting point Bs? Where can I go mountain biking this weekend? And so we saw an opportunity to get together with them at the same time where we saw some growth challenges in our user base. And so it just made sense to put the two companies together.
So a lot of it is right place, right time, not necessarily that you were...
it's a lot of right place, right time. When you start a company, you usually kind of run through all of that in your head of, if I'm not so successful that I'm going to be publicly traded or whatever, who are the companies that are going to be interested in this? And when we started Gobi in the travel and local space, we knew that travel companies would be interested. We knew that local search companies would be interested in, and strangely enough, we didn't think about GPS navigation companies at the time. So all these thoughts about, well, who might buy us someday, and Telenav was never one of the companies we thought about. So it kind of went left field for us. But if you build something that people find useful, it'll find a home.
Oh, that's good. And then it's grown since then, right? So is it still a Telenav product company?
So what we did with Gobi was we retired the brand, so there's no Gobi brand, but the technology around finding places to go, things to do, all of that technology is still in use in the broader Telenav product. So the Telenav product is called Scout. And, that's also, a number one iTunes and Android app from time to time in the navigation space. Very successful in its own right. And so the technology behind Gobi is sort of built into that.
That's great. And so when they acquired Gobi, did you come on as well as part of the team?
I did. We brought pretty much the whole team on. After the acquisition, the team was pretty much focused on product development and engineering. I came on, I stayed for about 2 years. I actually took on a product management role, running product management for the Scout products. So had some responsibility for things happening in Boston, but also product management responsibility for activities in California. And found myself flying to California every other week for the better part of 2 years.
Wow.
And most of the gray hair that you see, I think I got on those plane trips.
That's
so it was really fun. It was a lot of great product work, and I got to learn a lot about some interesting new spaces. But in the end, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life on a plane. So, and I was hungry to do something. I'd actually had the idea behind the project I'm working on now, the Hawaii project. I've had the ideas behind that actually for a number of years. Passionate person and been hungry to work on it, and finally got to where I felt like the time was right.
Wow, that's great. We are going to talk to you next about that after this quick break. So this is High Growth with HTDC, and I'm speaking with Mark Watkins of the Hawaii project. This is his new project. It's a Kickstarter project, and we're going to talk about that next, right after the break. Thank you.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the Think Tech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week, we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to Think Tech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the Think Tech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Hi, welcome back. This is High Growth with HTDC. I'm your host, Cindy Matsuki, and we are on Think Tech Hawaii. And if you have any questions for us and for our guest today, who is Mark Watkins, you can tweet us at ThinkTechHigh. So send us any tweets if you have any questions. I wanted to let you know what's going on around town. Tonight, April 21st, the UH Student Entrepreneurs Group is hosting their second annual showcase and fundraising dinner. They'll be featuring their member companies as well as have a silent auction. Come and support this group as they build the next generation of entrepreneurs. That should be fun. I'm gonna go, so come join me. Also happening tonight at the Manoa Innovation Center, the Oahu Online Business 2015 Seminar Series is learn the secrets of how to be your own boss, outsource effectively, and go from solopreneur to business. So that should be interesting. If you're starting your business, that sounds like one to go to. The second annual Mini Maker Fair Honolulu is coming up next month on May 9th from 12 to 5 p.m. The Maker Fair is the greatest show and tell on earth. A family-friendly showcase of invention, creativity, resourcefulness, and celebration of the maker movement. And they are looking for volunteers to help make this event bigger and better than last year. Registration is also open for this free event at Iolani School's Sullivan Center. So that's May 9th. Don't forget to check that out. That's a really good time. I heard it was really good last year, and I'm looking forward to going this year. For businesses and entrepreneurs who need some quick legal advice, every other Wednesday, HTDC offers free legal guidance in partnership with the Business Law Corps. You can sign up for a 30-minute appointment at the Manoa Innovation Center. Please visit htdc.org/legal to sign up for your free 30-minute appointment. And lastly, calling all SBIR Phase 1 winners, HTDC offers state matching funds for up to 50% of your Phase 1 award. If that's you and you've won a Phase 1 award recently, please contact us at sbir@htdc.org. Yay, so lots of things going on. So now we're back to our guest today, Mark Watkins. He's currently in North Carolina, but he works from both Boston and Hawaii. And he's been kind of going back and forth. And we're just going to start talking about his Kickstarter that he recently launched called the Hawaii Project. So give us a little pitch about what the Hawaii Project is.
Sure. The Hawaii Project is just a great way to find great books to read and also to keep up with news about the authors and the books that you love. I kept having the experience of finding out that authors that I loved had written books, sometimes 2, 3, 4 years ago, and nobody bothered to tell me. And so I started, and I'm a voracious book reader, and I started just building a little program to keep track of that for me, and that eventually blossomed into something that I think is a lot more interesting and complete than that.
And are you using the same technology that Gobi used?
No, it's not the same technology, but it's, every time you build a company, you learn an enormous amount about what works and what doesn't. And I think if I'm able to pull all this off as a solopreneur, as you were just talking about, if I'm able to pull that off, it has a lot to do with having made enough mistakes before that I know a lot of the mistakes to avoid and sort of how to get the most out of, a limited amount of engineering resource. So, if you make enough mistakes, you learn which mistakes not to make and how to do things.
That's good. And so is it part of your experience? Like, how did you choose to do a Kickstarter for this project?
So, when you start a new company, there are a lot of interesting options to look for, either look for funding or not. The most, I would say the most romanticized option is the venture capital option, right? I'm going to go raise millions of dollars from a venture capitalist. And for a lot of people, that becomes sort of that's the success, actually, is raising the venture capital, not building a successful company. And I think it's a little bit romanticized. There are a lot of companies that's the only way to build is through venture capital, but it's hard to raise venture capital, first of all. I mean, your average venture capitalist probably hears 10 pitches a day, days a year, and invests in, 2 or 3 companies a year. So it's hard to pull off. And it brings expectations that are not always appropriate or the ones that you want. So if if you're a venture capitalist, you're looking to invest, $2, $3, $10 million, maybe $20 million. And because of the, sort of the equation for venture capital, those companies eventually have to become, $100 million companies or $1 billion companies.
Mm.
Otherwise, it's quote unquote a failure for the venture capitalist, from a financial perspective. So only certain types of companies actually make sense for venture capital. And there's an expectation that you're going to sell the company, right? You're either going to go public, which doesn't really seem to happen anymore, or you're going to sell the company. In my case, this is a company with a social mission. It's very much around helping people find great books, but it's also about helping promote and develop literacy. So 10% of my revenue gets donated to 3 literacy nonprofits that I'm working with.
That's great. What are the nonprofits?
So the first one is called Library for All, and that's what may sound like a contradiction in terms to some people. It's a nonprofit startup. It's a small company, and they have found a way to, rather than boxing up books and shipping them to the developing world, they built a mobile app that lets people in the developing world get access to books for free through their cell phones or through tablets, and they've negotiated agreements with.
Oh, that's great.
And the biggest challenge in the developing world is carrier fees and data fees, and so they've negotiated deals so that gets waived. And so they're able to sort of build virtual libraries in the developing world. So it's very cool, and because it's very digital, it resonates with me.
That is very cool.
The second one is a company called First Book. That's a very well-established, very large literacy foundation. They've given away 125, 130 million books to underprivileged and needy families, primarily in the United States. I'm working with the third one, but I'm actually not allowed to name them yet. So
Well, that's awesome. 10%. Yeah. Well, speaking of,
that equation is a strange equation for venture capitalists, and I don't want to have to sell the company, right? If this is successful and it's generating a lot for literacy, this is a company I can run for the rest of my life. So that's a very long-winded way of saying, why did you do a Kickstarter? I decided that venture capital wasn't the right route for this company, at least not yet. And so Kickstarter is a way to do 2 things. One is obviously to raise some money and provide some capital to hire some people to take care of some development tasks, structure. But that's also, that's the way a lot of products get launched today. People launch through Kickstarter, and it's not just a way to generate cash, it's a way to generate awareness and to sort of create a community around your cause.
Definitely.
And so that's kind of what led me to it. Was actually, the money was actually the secondary goal, and the primary goal was, as a way to start to reach people, even before the product was launched, to get on the product and sort of start to build a community and learn what the community might be interested in.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. We have a couple of shots of the product that we can take a look at. I saw the first one. So is this what the screen looks like? So it's a website?
Yeah. I'm not actually able to.
It's the girl on the train. It looks like a book.
That's a picture of one of the books in the site, and once you've found a book that you might be interested in, there are a lot of interesting things you can do. You can check to see if your local library has the book. You can check to see if the local independent bookstore has the book. You can buy the book on Amazon. You can read articles about that book. So underneath all of this is a web crawling engine. So I'm out there crawling the web with a focus on the kind of the books blogosphere, right? What are book bloggers writing about? What is the New York Review of Books writing about? And so I analyze what all those posts are and which books they're writing about, and then I cross-reference them to the book. So when
and then you pull all that information together on one page.
Pull all that together on one page, so you can say, oh, here's what the New York Times Review of Books thought about Girl on the Train, for example. You can also get recommendations for other books that are similar to this book, or maybe people wrote about. So when they wrote about this book, they said, oh, this really reminds me of book XYZ.
Another book.
So that screen's kind of the endpoint of the process where you found a book that you're interested in and you want to learn more about it.
Wow. And I think we have a couple other shots. So this one has several books on the page. Science and Skinny Cookbook. The Winter Sea. So is this like a starting point?
Yeah, this is a recommendations page for someone who said, you know, I'm interested in cooking and I'm interested in literary fiction and you know, interested in these authors. And you know, the UI is you know, somewhat inspired by Pinterest, that sort of card style where you know, you put up something that's very visual. I think if you're a book person, like you love book covers, right? That's to me, that's one of the things about going into a bookstore is looking at the book covers and looking at the art, because it tells you so much about, you know, the emotion of the book.
Definitely, definitely.
And most of the book sites that are out there, including Amazon, they actually don't really, you know, the book covers are really small. They're hard to see. And so I always feel like when I'm on the web, I always feel like I'm looking at postage stamps, you know, the pictures. I wanted to go for something kind of bold and
Are you
vivid.
trying to zoom in on them?
Yeah, and so I wanted to go for something kind of bold and vivid and very visual, because I think that's a lot of how people sort of internalize what a book is about.
Definitely. People don't read all that much text. I think the book cover says a lot, definitely. So
yeah, you see the book cover and a description, and maybe you open it up and look at a few pages, and pretty quickly you decide whether the book's for you or not.
I see. So it kind of just shows a short synopsis of the book, but mainly the book cover.
Yep. And if you click on that, you would go to that page, for example, the girl on the page, train page that we were looking at. If you clicked on one of those, you'd go to that. But, you know, that's kind of the, you know, the cycle here is when you come to the system, you tell me what books you're interested in, what authors you love, what books you've read before. And that sort of creates an interest profile for you. So I know that, you know, if you told me 5 authors that you like, I can pretty much tell you a lot about the kinds of books that you're interested in. And then as you use the system and you tag through on more books, I'll learn even more about what you like. And all of that kind of goes in the hopper. And then every night I go out and I look to see what people are writing about, you know, in the last 24 hours. And I match that up against your personal interests. So if an author that you like just released a new book, let's say George R.R. Martin, I'm a fan of his, you know, not long ago he released a new book. I'll find out about that and alert you to that, either through the website or through email alerts. So I'll send you an email if an author that you wrote released a new book. And so that's the other thing that we learned actually with Gobi is that people don't really want to search. They don't really want to go wander around looking for things. You know, they want a system that knows them, that understands their context, and can bring them relevant things. So that's what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to, as quickly as I can, learn a little bit about what kind of books you're interested in, and then proactively bring those to you so you don't have to go looking for them.
Sounds a little bit like Pandora, where you kind of say, well, I like this artist or this genre.
Exactly. Very much like or Netflix, sort of learning what you like and then bringing things.
So do you have a rating too for your books?
You can see the ratings on there. You can click on the books that you really love as your favorites or books that you've read, and that all gets factored into your what I call your interest factor of the kinds of things that you're interested in. But it's, you know, books are actually in some sense much harder than say Netflix for movies or even Pandora for music. You know, the space of movies is actually pretty small. There actually aren't that many movies. You know, thousands or so. I mean, there's millions and millions of books published every year. And one of the big dynamics in the book space now is independent publishing, right? In the old days, you had to go get a publisher, you know, you had to sign on with a new publisher, and, you know, that was sort of the highlight of a writer's career when they got published by a big 5 publisher. Now anybody can write a novel if they have the gumption to do it and upload it to Amazon. I have a friend who does that, he's an independent author.
Wow.
Writes his own books, you know, uploads to Amazon, and, you know, I'm very successful at it. But, you know, the old gatekeepers, the publishers, that's not the only route anymore. So there's millions and millions of books. You know, that's the good news is there's lots of books. The bad news is read, well, which ones do I read?
Yeah, exactly. So the Hawaii Project will scrape all those books together and bring them to you.
That's where we come in, is making sense out of that, what I call that ocean of books that's published every year.
That's great. And just to let everybody know, 10% of the proceeds, and I believe it's a subscription model, right, for the Hawaii Project. So you subscribe for more service, and 10% of that goes to literacy nonprofits. So that is very interesting. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. This is High Growth with HTDC, and my guest today is Mark Watkins. He has launched the Kickstarter called the Hawaii Project, and we are on Think Tech Hawaii, and we'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevelin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at Think Tech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday.
This is Alice Lee Hagan, host of Think Tech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show here at Think Tech Hawaii is every Thursday from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. I bring in interesting guests from Hawaii, the mainland, and hopefully international guests in the future. Do join us on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. Think Tech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. Aloha.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon, and on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show.
Project on Kickstarter as well.
Yes. Hi, welcome back. This is Cindy Matsuki, and we are on High Growth with HTBC on Think Tech Hawaii. And my guest today is Mark Watkins of the Hawaii Project, which is a Kickstarter project. And we've been talking about what it does. It sounds pretty amazing, especially if you are a voracious reader. It'll tell you all the things that you should know about books that you should be reading. Where can we find more information about the Kickstarter, and how do we support it?
So the simplest thing is to just go to the Kickstarter website and search for the Hawaii Project, or alternatively, you can go to www.thehawaiiproject.com/Kickstarter.
That's a great name. I'm glad you got the URL. How did you come up with the name?
So, you know, as we were talking about, my wife's family is from Kailua, and, you know, we've been coming for many years, 20 years or so, to the islands, and it's always been a place for sort of rejuvenation for me, to kind of recharge my batteries. And you know, recharging my batteries to me often means lying on the beach reading a great book. And you know, that's kind of the emotion. You know, it's obviously, if you're in Hawaii and you say you're working on the Hawaii Project, that doesn't always resonate with people the same way as it does for people for whom the Hawaii is sort of a long sought destination. But that's really where it came from for me. That feeling of, you know, lying on the beach reading a great book is, you know, one of the ways I recharge, and that's the emotion I was trying to get to.
And do you find that it's resonating with people, like on the East Coast where you're at?
Yeah, well, especially with this winter. This winter's been, you know, I had at one point
Crazy.
a house here had a feet of snow in it. So, yeah, absolutely. People immediately go right to that. Oh, yeah, it's a great way to find a beach book. You know, so it's to be working, and I could get the URL.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to ask you, since you kind of run between Boston and Hawaii, what do you see the differences in between running your business here or there?
Yeah, well, when I'm in Hawaii, I can find a great coffee shop, and I can build code in my slippers, as they say, which is pretty nice. You know, I have a big network in Boston. I've been here for a long time, and so I know a lot of people. I know a lot of capital people, and so, you know, the network that I can draw on here is larger, and so that's a plus. I will say, you know, compared to, you know, even 5 years ago, you know, the startup community in Hawaii has become so much more vibrant that there is a lot more to draw on now. The other thing I find actually that's interesting is, believe it or not, is just the time zones, you know, because of the time zone difference. You know, I get up early, particularly if I need to deal with people on the East Coast, and, you know, get up early, work hard, and by mid-afternoon, you know, you can take a break and, you know, go down to the beach or, you know, recharge somehow. And so I find the time zones kind of work in my favor.
That's great. How is the Boston startup scene?
It's an amazing scene. It's probably, you know, it's clearly not as strong as Silicon Valley, but I would say after Silicon Valley, it's probably the strongest startup scene that there is. Particularly, you know, in the venture capital world, there's kind of a pendulum that swings back and forth between consumer businesses and, you know, B2B enterprise. businesses, and that's a place where Boston's always been very strong. And so we've had a lot of great companies. We've had a few IPOs recently. There's a really big travel scene here. So TripAdvisor is based here. A lot of people don't know that Kayak is based here. So there's a lot of travel work that happens here in the startup community.
Interesting. And I think that's such a great idea to partner your book project with the travel agencies, to kind of slip that in and say, hey, while you're flying, you need a book.
Well, I haven't tried it yet, but I would very much like to get in touch with, how nice would it be that you're on your Hawaiian Airlines flight into Honolulu, and the screen lights up with, and here's a way to find a few books to read while you're on the beach. It's maybe some kind of partnership there that I haven't found yet.
That's a great idea. I love it. And so I also know that you serve as a mentor for Techstars and some other accelerator type organizations. What has been the best advice that you give entrepreneurs? Or what do you usually say? Kind of advice that you give?
Obviously it depends on the startup. The first thing I tell them is, like, I've made enough mistakes. I'd like for you to make your own mistakes instead of making my mistakes. So, when people sort of talk through their business, a lot of times there are some things that they sort of stand out as sort of obvious challenges, and you like to point those out without discouraging people. Usually it's around customer acquisition. I mean, I think that's whether it's a consumer business or whether it's an enterprise sales business. The biggest question you have is, how many people are there that want my product? Is how much can I charge them for that product? And how do I get to them? How do I get a hold of them? And those are kind of I think early entrepreneurs tend to be very focused on the technology, and because that's the fun part, and I love the technology too and the product. But you can't, a lot of startup advice is, you should spend 50% of your time thinking about your product and 50% of your time thinking about how you're going to get customers. And because if you don't, it doesn't matter how great your product is. And I think that's a common mistake for especially early stage, first time entrepreneurs, is to neglect the customer acquisition process. How much is it going to cost me to get these customers? For example, in the local space, or you're going to do a food delivery startup or, a restaurant review startup, you have to think about, well, what if I have to physically call every single restaurant in Honolulu? How long is that going to take? How many people is that going to cost? And so helping people sort of think through their customer acquisition strategy, I would say, is probably the most common thing that, one of the first places I'd focus. So I've done a lot of Hawaii, and I'm hoping back in the islands this year that I'll have a chance to work with some of the companies that are there as well. I mean, I really like doing it. It's, I love sharing what I've learned. I love sharing my mistakes. I'm happy if I can prevent other people from making the mistakes that I made. That's great. That must be fun. Do you also have them actually go out and see? I mean, as far as pricing, do you recommend going out and asking your customers, your potential customers, about pricing? Like, what would you pay for my product? Absolutely. I mean, it's very, very easy to sort of theorize about what people think something's worth. And in fact, what they like about your product. I mean, I run, any number of surveys, even with my beta testers, and I'm often surprised by the things that they find interesting and helpful. They're not necessarily the things that I thought was going to be, the biggest value, but they do. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no, it's a pretty famous quote, but you can learn more in an hour of talking to customers than you can in a day of brainstorming and reporting. In the office. And I think it's funny when you talk about people thinking about the technology more than the customer, because when you had talked about how you found your technology for Gobi at MIT, but I guess that's okay in the university where you can just build whatever you want and technology that you want, but you don't necessarily need a customer. So it's like, okay, we have this cool thing, now what do we do with it? Well, I think a lot of great startups are born out of that pairing of, industrial research, academic research, with people who sort of build commercial companies. It's a very fertile intersection, because people who are in academia, they aren't constrained by necessarily having to come up with a practical application. Sometimes that means the technology is not that useful, but other times it means they come up with with a really novel approach to something that just needs to be put to the right use. So I think it's you know, I talked at the hackathon in February, I guess, and that's definitely one of the pieces of advice that I gave to people was hang around the university, talk to people who are doing research, because they may not know what it's for, but you may figure out what it's for, and then you have something differentiated and hard to reproduce.
That's great advice. Yeah, definitely. Especially if they're not necessarily thinking about what their technology potential is and necessarily commercializing it, but it is something cool, and so a business could take that and do something really great with it. That's a great idea. So we want to just go over your Kickstarter project one more time. If you want to find more information about it, where do we go? We go to Kickstarter?
Go to Kickstarter.com and search for the Hawaii Project, or you can go to the website, thehawaiiproject.com/Kickstarter. Either one of those will work.
Oh yeah, and how long is your Kickstarter running for? Your Kickstarter had started maybe last week, and then when does it run till?
We have 10 more days to go, so we're starting to get into the home stretches.
That's great. And how are you doing?
We're doing okay. We got a long way to go yet. I have a lot of work to do.
All right.
Everybody there, go support us.
Yes, we'll help you get the word out.
Exactly.
So, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you.
My guest has been Mark Watkins of the Hawaii Project. It's a Kickstarter project, and they're looking for people to support their Kickstarter right now. So check out Kickstarter.com and search up the Hawaii Project. And that's awesome. I think it's going to be a great app or website. So my guest today was Mark Watkins of the Hawaii Project on Kickstarter. Check it out. And this has been High Growth with HTDC on Think Tech Hawaii. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel of Think Tech Hawaii. Won't you consider helping Think Tech? We're a 501c3 Hawaii nonprofit corporation, now in our 15th year. Our model and very existence depends on ongoing contributions from our underwriters. We are very appreciative for their support. We're hoping you will consider becoming one of our Think Tech underwriters. Unless our underwriters prefer to be anonymous, we publicize them on thinktechhawaii.com and on our daily email program, sent to some 7,500 subscribers, our live stream talk shows, and our OC16 productions. With help from our underwriters, we have developed a high-tech video studio in Pioneer Plaza, and we now live stream 25 talk shows per week, covering science, tech, energy diversification, community, sustainability, and globalism for Hawaii. And we stream our earlier shows all night long. Our live stream is on thinktechhawaii.com. Check it out. We also upload all our shows to youtube.com, where we get 18,000 views per month. And we broadcast 12 hours per week on Olelo 54 and 3.5 hours per week on OC16. We also do monthly luncheon panel programs at the Lania Kea, and we write a monthly column for the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. We're really active. Our plans this year include improving the coverage, content, and production values of all of our programs, and including more issues and guests relating to the neighbor islands, either by Skype or in person. If you agree with our mission, I hope you'll consider helping us. If you have any questions about any of our activities, or if you'd like to discuss our underwriter arrangements, please write to me at j@fidel.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much for considering this suggestion, maybe even including you among our underwriters. Mahalo, I'm Jay Fidel of Think Tech Hawaii, and I approve this message. If you approve of it also, please give us a call.